If you look at a map, they drew an artificial line right through it between Canada and the U.S., just a straight artificial line. Somebody did it a long time ago, many, many decades ago, and makes no sense. The way I want them to keep doing it, because I don't think they can win a race. And I tell the Republicans, I said, don't bring that subject up because there's no election right now. But about a week before the election, bring it up because you can't lose. And we'll be talking to you. It's a very appropriate, really a very appropriate question.
It's an issue in the High North.
Remember when Oval Office meetings were about policy and diplomacy? Well, Trump just used one to talk about annexing Canada, conquering Greenland, and his political strategy around transgender issues, all while NATO's Secretary General tried to discuss actual security concerns. In the next 10 minutes, we'll walk you through the most jaw-dropping moments from this diplomatic disaster, including Trump's false claim that America has given $350 billion to Ukraine and his strange obsession with invading Los Angeles to turn on water supplies. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now, back to the video. Ever wonder what goes through Trump's mind when he looks at a map? Apparently, he sees Canada as the 51st state waiting to happen, during what should have been a serious discussion about NATO security concerns and alliance unity.
And to be honest with you, Canada only works as a state. We don't need anything they have. As a state, it would be one of the great states anyway. This would be the most incredible country visually.
I don't want to drag NATO in that, but when it comes to the High North and the Arctic, you are totally right. The Chinese are now using these routes. We know that the Russians are rearming. We know we have a lack of icebreakers.
And I saw this morning where one of them is pretty well known, one is arguing, fighting like crazy over men being able to play in women's sports. I said, yeah, I thought that was tried. I thought that was about a 95%, I think it's a 95% issue.
Trump decided that annexing our northern neighbor was the hot topic of the day. There sat NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, former Prime Minister of the Netherlands, probably expecting to talk about defense spending or military coordination. Instead, he got a front row seat to Trump's geopolitical fantasy hour. The Orange in Chief started rambling about how Canada only works as a state and how the border is just an artificial line that could easily be erased. With Rutte looking visibly uncomfortable, Trump doubled down on his bizarre Canada takeover plan. He actually had the audacity to declare, "We don't need anything they have as a state. It would be one of the great states anywhere." Imagine being so arrogant that you dismiss an entire country's resources while simultaneously claiming they'd make a great state. The logic is about as solid as Trump's hairdo in a windstorm. But wait, it gets better. Trump, in his infinite generosity, suggested that if Canada became America's newest acquisition, they could keep their national anthem. I love it. I think it's great, keep it, but it'll be state one of our greatest states, he proclaimed. How thoughtful of him to let Canadians keep singing "Oh Canada" while pledging allegiance to the Stars and Stripes. His face remained completely serious throughout this ridiculous proposal, as if he was discussing nothing more unusual than the weather. While most world leaders might focus on strengthening alliances or addressing global challenges, Trump was busy redrawing maps in his head. The NATO meeting's actual agenda items, completely forgotten. Instead, Trump treated Rutte to his vision of Manifest Destiny 2.0, where America just absorbs its peaceful neighbor to the north because Trump thinks it would look better visually on a map. In Trump's mind, this whole annexation business would be a walk in the park. He casually mentioned there would be a little disruption if America annexed Canada, but insisted that it won't be very long, just a minor hiccup in international relations. Nothing to worry about when you're conquering a sovereign nation with 38 million people and the second largest landmass in the world. Totally normal stuff. Perhaps the most bizarre aspect of Trump's Canada fantasy was how he framed it as doing Canadians a favor. In his warped reality, our northern neighbors are just sitting around in their hockey jerseys, sipping maple syrup, desperately waiting for America to absorb them. Never mind that Canada consistently ranks higher than the US in quality of life metrics. Trump knows what's best for them. The irony here is staggering. While Trump dismissively claimed America doesn't need Canadian resources, the reality is that the US-Canada relationship is deeply interdependent. Canada is one of America's most crucial trading partners and a significant supplier of energy and resources. But why let facts get in the way of a good annexation fantasy? Poor Secretary General Rutte had to sit there politely nodding, while Trump essentially threatened one of NATO's founding members. One can only imagine the diplomatic cables flying back to European capitals. Urgent, former US president discussing conquest of allies. Send help. What makes this whole episode even more absurd is that it happened during what should have been a serious discussion about international security. Instead of addressing genuine threats, Trump was busy playing Risk with real countries, treating global alliances like properties on a monopoly board. But wait, Trump's land acquisition fantasies aren't limited to our northern neighbor. His eyes are set on a much icier prize. Just when you thought the map redrawing session couldn't get weirder, Trump pivoted to his longtime obsession, Greenland. If you're wondering why Trump wants a massive ice-covered island in the Arctic, join the club. But apparently in Trump's mind, Greenland is the hottest real estate deal since Manhattan. During that same Oval Office meeting, Trump decided to question Denmark's entire claim to Greenland with all the confidence of someone who definitely failed history class. A boat landed there 200 years ago or something, and they say they have rights to it, Trump declared, dismissing Denmark's sovereignty like it was just some minor paperwork issue. I don't know if that's true. I don't think it is, actually. Yes, folks, Trump is now an expert on Danish territorial claims based on absolutely zero research. But here's where it gets really wild. Trump looked straight at NATO Secretary General Rutte and basically tried to recruit him for his Arctic conquest. Like NATO was created to be Trump's personal real estate acquisition team. Poor Rutte's face must have been doing Olympic-level gymnastics trying to maintain diplomatic composure. The former reality TV star then hinted at his master plan for a military takeover, saying maybe you'll see more and more soldiers go there. Not subtle at all, Donnie. Secretary General Rutte visibly squirmed as Trump basically outlined an invasion plan of a NATO ally right to his face. Currently, America has about 200 troops stationed at the Patuxent Space Base in Greenland, which is apparently not enough for Trump's ambitions. Instead of discussing actual security matters, Trump kept circling back to his Greenland fantasy like a kid who won't stop asking for ice cream at dinner. Mark, we need that for international security, he insisted, as if Denmark was selfishly hoarding ice and rocks that rightfully belong to America. This wasn't just empty talk from our wannabe Viking raider. Trump has been laying groundwork for his Greenland conquest for years. He recently made direct appeals to the Greenlandic people themselves, telling Congress, "We strongly support your right to determine your own future, and if you choose, we welcome you into the United States of America." How generous of him to welcome an entire territory that isn't his to offer. The most jaw-dropping moment came when Trump basically suggested NATO should help America snatch Greenland from Denmark. I think NATO might have to get involved in a way because we really need Greenland for national security, Trump declared. That's right, Trump wants to use NATO, an alliance formed to protect members from aggression, to help America take territory from a NATO member. The irony is thicker than Trump's makeup. Trump did try to dress up his land grab in strategic clothing, mentioning concerns about Russian and Chinese activities in the Arctic region, but his focus clearly wasn't on legitimate security cooperation. It was on how America could control Greenland's resources and position. Danish officials have been understandably critical of Trump's comments, viewing them as disrespectful and showing a complete misunderstanding of international relations. Let's be real here. Trump treats international diplomacy like it's one big monopoly game where he's trying to collect all the properties. The difference is that in Monopoly, you have to actually pay for properties instead of just sending troops there and claiming you need them for national security. If Trump's real estate empire ever goes under, he could always start a business selling friendship bracelets, except he'd only offer them to dictators while charging his allies triple. The former president's diplomatic double standards reached new heights during his bizarre meeting with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte. After fantasizing about gobbling up friendly territories like a hungry Pac-Man, Trump's attitude did a complete 180 when the conversation shifted to Russia. When asked about whether countries should worry about Russian aggression, Trump waved it off like a pesky fly at a barbecue. No, I don't think so. I think when this gets done, it's done. They're going to all want to go home and rest. I don't see it happening, he said with a casual shrug. Apparently, in Trump's worldview, the biggest threat to America isn't the country actively undermining democracies worldwide. It's our maple syrup-loving neighbors to the north. The cognitive dissonance was on full display. In the exact same meeting where Trump proposed stealing Greenland from Denmark and turning Canada into America's attic, he couldn't muster even the mildest criticism of Putin. It's like inviting both your best friend and your worst enemy to dinner, then spending the evening insulting your friend while asking your enemy if they'd like seconds on dessert. Poor Mark Rutte had to sit there maintaining his diplomatic poker face while Trump essentially dismissed the entire reason NATO exists. Imagine being the head of an alliance specifically created to counter Russian threats and having to listen to the former leader of your most powerful member country say, "Russia, nah, they're fine." Rutte's uncomfortable expression spoke volumes, the diplomatic equivalent of that blinking white guy meme. Trump's creative accounting skills were also on full display as he wildly inflated America's contributions to Ukraine while downplaying European support. He claimed the US has given $350 billion in aid, while Europe has only coughed up $100 billion. In reality, European nations have been more generous than America, with contributions exceeding $200 billion. But hey, who needs accurate numbers when you're busy rewriting the world map, right? The contrast in Trump's language was particularly telling. While he couldn't find a single negative word to describe Russia or Putin, he had plenty of nasty adjectives ready for America's allies. He called the European Union very, very nasty right in front of Rutte, who probably wished he could teleport back to the Netherlands at that moment. It's like Trump has a separate vocabulary for friends versus foes, except he's got the categories completely backwards. This isn't just weird, it's deeply concerning. Trump treats international diplomacy like a reality TV show where he's constantly plotting to backstab his alliance members while cozying up to the villain. The man who wants to run the free world again seems more interested in conquering friendly nations than addressing actual threats to global security. What makes this whole scenario even more bizarre is the timing. As NATO countries increasingly worry about Russian aggression following events in Ukraine and threats to Baltic states, Trump is essentially telling them their concerns aren't valid. It would be like telling someone whose house is on fire that they should really be more worried about their neighbor's garden gnome collection. The meeting revealed Trump's fundamental misunderstanding of how alliances work. He treats America's closest friends like properties on a monopoly board he wants to acquire, while giving actual adversaries a free pass. In Trump's diplomatic playbook, the formula seems simple. The closer the ally, the harsher the treatment. If there's one thing to take away from this diplomatic disaster, it's that Trump's foreign policy operates on a principle of inverse relationships. The more a country threatens American interests, the nicer he is to them. And conversely, the more a country supports America, the more likely Trump is to suggest invading them or making wild accusations about their financial contributions. So there you have it, folks. While the whole world watches in horror, Trump sits in the Oval Office playing Risk with real countries. The most telling part of this NATO meeting wasn't just his bizarre fantasies about grabbing Canada and Greenland, it was how he treats our enemies better than our friends. Trump's diplomatic approach is basically, "Hey allies, I might invade you someday, but Russia? They're fine." This dangerous pattern of alienating friends while sucking up to dictators isn't just embarrassing, it's a wrecking ball to America's global standing. Poor Mark Rutte had to sit there with his diplomat face on while Trump essentially suggested using NATO as his personal real estate acquisition team. The scariest part? This isn't just grumpy Trumpy being weird again. This is 19th century imperial thinking from a guy who might get his finger back on the nuclear button. America's allies aren't properties in a global monopoly game, but clearly nobody told the orange deal maker that.